Well, I don't have the dust jacket on me, but this is Daredevil by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson, the Omnibus, and the dust jacket's not that interesting anyway. Still, I'm missing it for the reviews. Sorry about that. It's just like a red and black thing that has their names on it, so not that exciting. But I am John Delarose. I am a #1 best-selling comic creator and an award-winning comic creator. You can get my books in the description below if you like my thoughts on comics. All right. If you've been watching the channel, you know I've been going through every Daredevil Omnibus, and I caught up to Modern from that whole Volume 2 reboot. And then I went back and read Frank Miller afterward. Kind of the wrong order to do things, because all of those books, as I've read them, all of them reference and just call back to this, is what it comes down to. And so you really should read this first. It does kind of spoil the Kingpin stories and all that as you get into it. The dust jacket on the back actually has the contents of it, but you get Daredevil 158 through 161 with a skip to 163 through 191 and What If number 28. Now, the 162 issue is a one-off by Steve Ditko, and that can be found in the Steve Ditko Masters volume there if you wanted to go complete everything and read it all the way through. It doesn't really have much bearing on the stories in here. Now, originally, these are written by Roger McKenzie, and Frank Miller does the pencils. So you start with this, like, kidnapping situation where you get a little bit more of a, like, goofy superhero story with some weird powers that he has to deal with. And these are kind of fun. This is early 80s stuff, so I think Marvel's really running at its peak right now. I really like Frank Miller's layouts, his storytelling in here, as he has to deal with this. And Roger McKenzie's writing is pretty fantastic. I enjoyed it very much. Then you get into 160, you get Bullseye showing up. Bullseye showed up originally in issue 131. So you got Black Widow dealing with that and trying to help Daredevil out. Just like the layouts are very nice. Look at Frank Miller really does a beautiful job with Black Widow there. And then it starts to get into the meat of the story after all of this. So you kind of conclude the arc that's been going on right here. Fun stuff. And then we get back into the next sort of run. We get a quick fight with the Hulk, of all things. I think the Hulk ones are always very fun. And then we get into, like, Frank Miller dealing with Daredevil past and all that. Roger McKenzie's still writing here. And I enjoyed all this quite a bit. So I started here thinking, wow, this really isn't that dark. This is pretty fun stuff. Typical superheroics. You get the Gladiator, and he's, trying to be good. He's got, like, a social worker who he's in love with, and she's trying to help him out. Got David Michelinie doing an issue here. Again, it feels like just normal superheroics. Normal Marvel house style. Frank Miller's art is really cool. Klaus Janson does a great job with the inks, with just like setting some cool mood tones and all that. And then Frank Miller really starts to write them himself. And Klaus Janson does the finishes. Janson. And Elektra's introduced in this issue, and she's showing up. And then we go back in time to his past, where we learn about her origin, how she showed up back then. Was part of this family who was like having problems. Her dad got assassinated. And it changed her life. She made her bitter. And she liked to train and all that with him. And suddenly Bullseye is back out. And Bullseye's gone crazy and is just seeing daredevils everywhere. Wants to kill all the daredevils. And they do like a medical procedure on him where like he kind of forgets all that. And so they get back into it. And then the Kingpin shows up. And of course that's kind of where things go. Now, after reading all this, and the Kingpin being such a badass, and dealing with his wife problems, going after Daredevil, he's controlling some political mayor guy to really maneuver things. There's another gang that's after him. The Hands, like, allegedly killed his wife, but it really didn't happen. Rival assassins going after each other. Bullseye's hired as an assassin. At this point, it changes tone quite a bit. You saw the beginning was like super heroic, lots of weird powers and all that. Now it gets to like gritty and dark a little bit. You can see Frank Miller's influence on Todd McFarlane's art later, though. It starts to change a little bit from the typical Marvel House style to something with a little bigger eyes, a little more expression. The panel layouts kind of change a little bit through the course of here. There's very early changes to the way that comics work, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I always talk about Frank Miller and Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore as people who ruined comics. And I was almost like on board with like, okay, this is pretty cool. I like Elektra. Of course, like lots of the characters from the beginning of the arc come back with Gladiator and all that. And then Elektra dies and gets just brutally murdered in the course of this as there's a fight with the hand and all that. And once that happens, the tone really shifts in this. And as you can see, the panel layouts are getting a little wilder now. They're getting a little dark. Everything's getting a little darker in tone. And the whole Kingpin thing arc really starts. And Matt Murdock's almost just like, he's broken down. He goes crazy a little bit. Turns against everybody, or at least it seems like he is, as he's like trying to figure out how to defeat the Kingpin. And this is kind of where it gets ugly to me. And so the first half of the arc, it's like, oh, Frank Miller was held back a little bit. Now he's gone. Now he's just like really let do whatever he wants with this character. And it's just changed that whole dark tone. You can see like Matt Murdock's crazy. She's alive when she's really not. At least for the time being. There is like a hand resurrection story in here where Elektra kind of comes back at the very end. Eventually, you see the Punisher gets involved. Punisher and Daredevil stories work out pretty well. And the thing is, like, I don't hate this. Like I said, the beginning, fun superhero stuff. I really like Frank Miller's layouts. Klaus Johnson's finishes look really good. It's really nice to read. It's all smooth. Even the beginning of this, like, the dialogue's pretty good. It just gets really dark to where the hero gets deconstructed and torn down. And, like, he's crazy. He's kind of losing his soul in his pursuit against the Kingpin here. And very, very cool work on the colors with this. This is just a neat page. I got to give credit here. You got the dark, and it really lends to the, like, whole ninja feel with Black Widow kind of coming to the rescue towards the end of this series. And they're trying to resurrect Elektra to become, like, the Hand's evil at this point. And eventually Matt and his friends kind of have to go stop that from happening. And the Kingpin actually helps Daredevil towards the end of this. It was like, we're part of a team, kind of. So that's where it gets kind of icky. And I like the art. Like I said, the layouts look really cool. This is really where they start to experiment and change things, like from the typical comic book that was going on in the 70s at that point. And, you know, I mean, it really allowed for a lot of cool comic presentations based on some of the work that was done here just on the art end to change things. But I really didn't like the deconstruction of the character. And, you know, you could have been a little lighter, and you could have, there's Elektra back alive, and that's it. And then you get this weird, so you get that Elektra is alive, but she's gone. You can see she's now in white, which is symbolizing that she's been purified in sort of a way. She's not really part of the hand thing. Then you get this weird closure of an issue where Daredevil's like playing Russian roulette with a gun with Bullseye in a hospital, and just lamenting about how, like, he couldn't save this kid and, like, ruined this kid's life in his fight with Bullseye. Turns out the gun's empty, but, like, Matt Murdock sat there like a crazy person, pointing an empty gun at this paralyzed guy. I mean, it just does not feel right. It's very anti-hero stuff. This was a weird way to close out the run, and I hated this issue. Absolutely hated it. I'd say the real storyline ended here, and this was like a weird coda, and I don't even know why they bothered doing this 191. And that's it. So, look, overall, this storyline was okay. Like, I mean, it started as a continuing storyline about halfway through, and the stuff that was built in the first half of this I thought was excellent comics. On the second half of it, the art really started to express itself. The art really looks good, but the storyline really just like took the character of Daredevil and kind of just took him down this dark path, which is just kind of led towards a lot of bad stuff happening in comics in general. And that's the sort of thing I don't like the influence of it in comics. Now, there is a single what if issue, and what if he became an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it's just that. It's kind of a weird storyline for Murdoch there. But it's fun. And then you get like this huge interview with Frank Miller and Klaus Johnson at the back, which is really an interesting read where you get into their influences and their thoughts on the character and all that, as well as a bunch of like process pages after that for the extras. So great omnibus. The construction's great as always. Marvel does a killer job with these. Overall, it is hard to look at this without its influence on comics as a whole and just the direction that it started to take things as it got darker, which I really think ruined comics over time. That's tough. The storyline itself, though, it worked. It was pretty fun. It was pretty gripping all the way through. That last issue I felt was really tacky and just not good for Matt Murdock. But beyond that, I had to say that I enjoyed this book more than I didn't enjoy it. So I got to give it an 8 out of 10. If you look at later Daredevil runs, you do see that they literally just lift from this run. They lift everything. And I got to just say, I hope I never see any more Kingpin or Bullseye stories again, because it's overdone now. Thank you. So, yeah, 8 out of 10. Enjoyable. I would read this first before reading the modern stuff, because you really do see the influence, and that does make it tough to go back and be like, oh, I've read this before when this is the actual original. But that's it for this book. Let me know what you think about it. Hit that like and subscribe button. I'll be back soon.